Yes, you've connected dark matter and dark energy, and I'd like to know more about that. Kurman Vafa
Okay.
has also connected dark matter and dark energy, but it's a different idea. It's dark dimensions, it's Kaluza-Klein gravitons, and so yours isn't that.
That's correct. No, it's connected to the idea that the world, the universe we live in, is, as I said, a very different one than the one that we've been studying so far, which is called anti-de Sitter space. Anti-de Sitter space you think about as a universe without dark energy. So the space that we have has dark energy in it, and it creates a very different space-time where there's a horizon, very much like the horizon of a black hole. There's also entropy associated to that. And many of the ideas, especially this Ryuta-Ganyagi idea, or some generalizations of that have been recently studied, which called quantum extremal surfaces and so on, they don't apply to this kind of universe. And you see that there's different microscopic descriptions required to understand how this positively curved, the space that space-time that we have now with dark energy, how that is going to be described. I already mentioned this word computational complexity, which I think is going to be crucial in understanding this. But what we have to do is to go back to this derivation, basically the derivation of Jacobson of the Einstein equation. So how do we derive it? If we don't have these assumptions that the entanglement goes like the area, if there's some other form of entropy that's in that universe, then you will find other equations. And I have found actually it's going back actually to discoveries by Milgram about ways in which galaxies and their rotation curves behave. He found a connection between where the rotation curves of galaxies start deviating from what is described by Newton's and Einstein's equations, and the cosmological expansion. Some way in which our cosmos is behaving. And that discovery and that connection, I think, is quite an important one, because it actually tells us indeed that the expansion of the universe, the way that we are viewing the stars moving away from us using this Hubble constant, that's also telling us where this horizon is sitting, because if things are moving away from us at a speed that increases with the distance, there will be some distance in which it's moving away with the speed of light that we call the horizon. That actually also tells us how much entropy is there in the universe. So what I discovered is that by thinking about this entropy, you can actually explain the observation that Milgram made, namely that there is this deviation from the gravitational laws exactly where we are observing it in these galaxies. Yeah, so anyway, I think that there's something that needs further development, and certainly theoretically we have to understand it much better. But it's certainly the area in physics where we're gonna make a connection with observation, because I think our theoretical explorations of what quantum gravity is so far have been very far from any observations. But I do think that these cosmological observations about dark matter and so on are actually due to effects in quantum gravity, and therefore that's our hope to finally make a prediction or have some observation of something that where we can test our theories.
Yes, you derive Milgram's acceleration as equaling the sixth of the Hubble constant. So, as far as I know, you're the only person who's done that from first principles. I could be incorrect. Are you aware of any other approaches that get that same result?
No, but I have to say that of course I was aware of the work by Milgram. I have this idea of how to connect it to the ideas of emergent gravity, and I wanted to see if that could work in also explaining the actual phenomena that we are observing. And I wrote down what I would call also an effective description. As I already mentioned, I think our theoretical understanding has to be improved. And I like to eventually motivate my colleagues also who are thinking about gravity and the way it's emerging from a more microscopic quantum description in terms of, well, entanglement or complexity and so on, to even think about those questions, because I think we have really a chance to verify our ideas in observational facts. And if that happens, of course, that would be spectacular. But I'm quite convinced, actually, at this moment, that this is going to be uh, happening, and I hope it's going to be even generally kind of accepted in the next 10 or 15 years, because I do think that uh, our program of understanding gravity more fundamentally from quantum principles and quantum information is going to lead to these modified equations for the gravitational force. And anyway, we need to make a lot of progress in our theory to see how we can make that more precise. But certainly nowadays, I think actually currently we are even discussing many problems about this kind. I mean, there's one of the conferences I went to last month in December actually. It was about precisely how we can think about the gravitational force or even the emergence of what are called closed universes. So where we have universes without boundary, not like anti-de Sitter space. So that is actually a very exciting development. And I think that it's going to go in the direction that I was already envisaging. I mean, there are some ways in which many of the assumptions that I made, or how should I say, the intuitive steps that I made in my description are being verified in that context.
What would a boundary bulk duality look like in the case of a closed universe?
There's no boundary, of course. So I think the idea that the microscopic theory lives on the boundary, I always think that was was not a relevant thing, in the sense that I think people confuse themselves in the sense that there's a microscopic theory, it lives on some space, and there's a bulk theory, it lives on some other space. The fact that the space on which the microscopic theory lives happens to look like the boundary is not the same as saying that it lives on the boundary. I think people have I think that's really a oversimplification of what's going on. And so what I think is true even in closed universes is that there is a microscopic theory. But you're going to ask me, what space does it live on? I don't care about what space it lives on. It should be a microscopic theory. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't need a space. The space is emergent. It's not like, and that's actually going back to your question, that in Rhetorogeniaki, space doesn't entirely emerge because we already assumed that the microscopic theory was living on some space. I think it's much nicer if you don't assume anything about the microscopic theory. It doesn't need to live on some space.
The Economist covers math, physics, philosophy, and AI in a manner that shows how different countries perceive developments and how they impact markets. They recently published a piece on China's new neutrino detector. They cover extending life via mitochondrial transplants, creating an entirely new field of medicine. But it's also not just science. They analyze culture, they analyze finance, economics, business, international affairs across every region. I'm particularly liking their new insider feature. It was just launched this month. It gives me, a front row access to The Economist's internal editorial debates, where senior editors argue through the news with world leaders and policymakers in twice weekly long format shows. Basically, an extremely high-quality podcast. Something else you should know about is that if you go to their app, they not only have daily articles, but they also have long-form podcasts with their editors and writers. This is also available online. Whether it's scientific innovation or shifting global politics, The Economist provides comprehensive coverage beyond headlines. As a TOE listener, you get a special discount. Head over to economist.com/TOE to subscribe. That's economist.com/TOE for your discount.